Hello and welcome to this interview of the Gateway House Careers in International Affairs video series. Today we have with us Mr. Manish Shanker Sharma. He is a senior officer of the prestigious Indian Police Service of the Government of India. He is currently serving as Inspector General of Police in the state of Madhya Pradesh. Mr. Sharma holds a Master's in International Affairs and Public Policy from the University of California with specialization in international security, counterterrorism, and public policy. He also holds an MBA. Mr. Sharma has had a diverse experience of 23 years with the government, having served across 4 continents: Europe, Africa, and North America, in addition to various parts of Asia. He has served with the United Nations Peacekeeping Forces with distinction and has been deputed to other foreign assignments besides his domestic experience in India. His background incorporates a unique composition of service in the fields of law enforcement, counterterrorism, diplomacy, peacekeeping in a European civil war, and ensuring transportation security in India. He is the prestigious recipient of the US Congress Special Congressional Recognition. Mr. Sharma was bestowed with a unique distinction by the United States of America. He is the first Indian to have a proclamation of a day issued in his name on July 20th. Welcome, Mr. Sharma. How do you look back on your career today? Could you describe your career trajectory?
Thank you, Tanya, and thank you, Gateway House, for inviting me here. This, in terms of my career, if I was to use a couple of words, it would be very satisfying and very gratifying. I've had a career that's spanned across different continents, 4 continents. I've had a career that's spanned across different spheres. So, as a law enforcement officer, as a diplomat, as an academic, as a UN peacekeeper. So it's been, a conglomeration of different things, and each of which has been very, very satisfying. Starting from the basic initial 8 to 10 years, which were as chief of police, as a superintendent of police, where you have the satisfaction of actually working directly for serving the interests of the society. And till now, I just did my academic sojourn a few months back. It's been truly a very wonderful story that I've been completely satisfied about. In terms of how do I describe it, I did my MBA, after which I appeared in the civil services examinations, and on being selected to the Indian Police Service, I was allotted to the Madhya Pradesh cadre, which is the Madhya Pradesh state. It also happens to be my home state, and I'm fortunate that I was serving in my home state. I served as a chief of police in various districts in Madhya Pradesh, and after doing that for several years, I was picked up for the UN Peacekeeping forces in Bosnia. This was a time when the civil war had just concluded in the European country, and the UN had gone in representing about 32 nations to enforce the Dayton Agreement. After that, I came back to India and did a stint with the Government of India with the Ministry of Civil Aviation. So I was Director Security for all airports in India. And at that point in time, privatization was about to take place. So there were 110 airports in India, right from Leh to Trivandrum in the south, and from Bhuj to Leelabadi, which is on the corner of Assam in the east. Then after that, I was picked up by the Ministry of Commerce for an assignment in Dubai. And I was based out of Dubai to promote India's exports, commodity exports. And I was responsible for an area that covered 22 countries of the West Asia, Africa, and South Africa region. So everything in between Istanbul, Cape Town, and Islamabad. After which I came back to my state, and I served as IG Intelligence, as IG Railways, and then the final part, about 7 months ago, I returned from the US. I was in the US For academic sojourn, I did additional masters in international relations, counter-terrorism, and public policy. So it's been a career that has seen various fields.
Okay, thank you for that. So you had mentioned working for the United Nations. Can you tell us some of your duties as Chief of Police with the UN Peacekeeping mission in Europe?
Certainly. You see, before I start doing that, let me give you a perspective of the UN peacekeeping mission there. Europe hasn't seen very many peacekeeping missions because it's always the Europeans doing peacekeeping elsewhere. So for a mission to be actually stationed in Europe, it was very unique at that time. And the country, the mother country, Yugoslavia, was falling apart. A couple of countries had already been created, Slovenia as we know it now, Croatia, and the third one was where the civil war had erupted in its most ferocity, which was Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I was there as part of the UN peacekeeping forces, and our job there was multifarious. It had several aspects to the working of the UN there. When we went in there, to give you a perspective, even though on the map it looked like it's one country, it is actually three countries there. So the ethnicities that were actually fighting with each other had carved out areas. So there was one area in which the Serbs would not let anyone else enter, and they had formed their own enclave. There was one area in which the Croats were doing the similar thing. And there was one area, the third one, in which the Bosniaks were doing the same thing. And each of these areas had their own currency. Each of these areas had their own flags. Each of these areas, the cars had different number plates which are not recognizable in the other part, and no resident from any of the areas could go to another area. So that was the situation that we had gone in then. And even today, to be very frank about it, the international community has done a lot for the country, but even today the country still has 3 presidents by rotation. So for 4 months there is a Serb who's president, for 4 months a Croat, and 4 months a Bosnian. So the task of the UN there was basically, one was training the local police and the local judiciary. It was a country that was transitioning from war to peace, and peace in a democratic setup. So our job there was to train the local police, which so far was divided into these 3 ethnicities, and therefore only thinking in terms of their own people rather than as a country. So train that, train the judiciary into norms of democratic policing to serve a democratic country. So that was an effective transition that we were supposed to make for them. So that was one part. Part of this was also setting up a national police and judicial academy, which we helped, the UN helped in setting up there. I was fortunate to have played an instrumental role in setting up that academy. It's doing very well now, which is now on a regular basis training officers for the new country. In addition to this, the violations of the human rights that were taking place in the country, the monitoring of that was another aspect that the UN was looking into. So the UN had their own police stations, and these police stations would investigate reports of violation of human rights coming from the field units. And if there was something serious found, then action would be suggested to the local government. So that was another thing. Also, part of our duties was to take care of the logistics arising out of the huge international aid that was coming into Bosnia. That was in billions of dollars. So how to distribute that aid fairly between the two agreemented cantons and within the two separate areas in the different districts. So that was another part of the job in the UN.
Thank you, that was very interesting. You'd also mentioned working in Dubai. So what were the highlights of your time in Dubai as an Indian trade diplomat responsible for the 22 countries that you'd mentioned of the West Asia and Africa region?
Okay, so the work in Dubai was again extremely challenging and extremely interesting, as most of my assignments have been so far, and a little different from what I did earlier. The task was cut out in terms of improving India's commodity exports in the region. And Dubai, as you know, is the financial hub and the trading hub of the Middle Eastern and the larger West Asia, North Africa region. So the Ministry of Commerce had an office in Dubai where we operated from. I was chief of that office, and it was an experience that was totally fascinating. We were operating, even though we were operating from Dubai, we had to go to different countries multiple times, and these were countries where India was exporting a lot of commodities, but at the same time were not very business friendly countries also. They had their own rules, regulations, which were difficult for the businessmen to understand of India. So our job was to basically organize meetings with the importers there, take our trade delegations to that country, make them sit down together, sort out the problems that the exporters were having, meet with top ministry officials in those countries, organize buyer-seller meets, organize India shows, different aspects of participating in various fairs, international fairs that take place. One very interesting thing that the government of India does, and not many people are aware, is that we take up space in international fairs and give that space free of cost to Indian businessmen. So they can come, display their products. The government pays for that space, but the Indian businessmen can display their products and sell their products from there, generate buyers for themselves. So that was another thing that we were doing. We used to operate through our missions in every country. So our embassies and the high commissions in all these 22 countries assisted us a lot, whether it was in Istanbul or in Johannesburg or in Iran, Tehran we had to go several times, Cairo, so all these countries. There was something very, very interesting in addition to all of this, which was organizing India shows, which means showcasing everything that is good and stupendous about India. So this was again an initiative of the then Ministry of Commerce through the association with various industry bodies, so FICCI and the CII and other bodies were associated with this. And the basic job that was demarcated was to organize a complex set of activities in one particular city of the region. It could be Johannesburg, it could be Dubai, it could be Istanbul, it could be Singapore. And in that, it was a mix of Indian culture, Indian cuisine, Indian business, and Indian music. So everything brought on Indian fashion, brought on one single platform. So that was another thing. So Dubai again was a very fascinating and challenging experience.
Okay, that's interesting. Lastly, what advice would you give students looking to pursue a career path similar to yours?
Well, there are several things I would like to say. At the outset, I'd like to say that there is no limit to success. You should dream big. You should be able to see small opportunities. You should be very observant. There is also no replacement to hard work and commitment. Whatever field you choose, whatever work you want to do, these are some basic ingredients. Of course, all this, if it can mesh into the passion that you have, I strongly feel that if your work can be your passion, which in my case has been very much so, if your work can be your passion, there is no stopping what you can achieve in life. So that's extremely, extremely important, in addition to so many other things that most people talk about.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Sharma. If you have any questions or suggestions, please put them in the comment section below. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and SoundCloud. Thank you.